there now, and we can start letting folks in.
Yep,
Admit
it looks like
everyone.
it is up.
All right, hello everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour once again. Great to see you here. Happy Saturday, the week after Easter. Getting that spring vibe together. It's gonna be a good year. Rest of the year, it's gonna be good spring and summer. Loving it. So we're just kind of letting things get out there, get out on Facebook, get out on YouTube. I will do an intro to the program here momentarily, and then we'll get into it with today's guest, a very esteemed guest, and a privilege to have our guest today. But I won't give away who exactly it is and what they're up to yet. I will start to give an intro to the program, though, so you know exactly what you're doing here if it's your first time or you're just catching us on the socials. This is Piano Tech Radio Hour. And what we do here is we gather every Saturday to meet with and learn from the most fascinating and knowledgeable folks in the piano world. This could include manufacturers or builders, musicians, makers of other instruments, and of course, piano techs. Our mutual goal is to become better at our craft, to help each other, and to create an ever more musical world together. Piano Tech Radio Hour is brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, an online learning resource that brings you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. You can find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. You can also subscribe to Radio Hour of this program for just $16 a month. You get direct access to each week's private Zoom call, as well as the archival recordings of about 200 episodes in our member area. That's nearly 4 years of weekly content. You can join Piano Tech Radio Hour at bit.ly/join PTRH, bit.ly/join PTRH. We'll make sure and put those links in the chat for everyone. And then a few announcements and necessary housekeeping up front here. Make sure that you go check out the podcast. So we're doing some cool new stuff with the podcast. We used to just release archival episodes that were about 2 years old. Now we're mixing in our newer episodes. So this episode, for example, you'll have an audio only version, hopefully in about a month. We're working on our production schedule, but we're releasing a lot more newer content. So that's very fun. And you can check out that podcast at pianotechradio.com. Also, check out our blog, pianotechniciansmasterclass.substack.com. What we do there lately is we go into the archives of our masterclasses, which is more in-depth content than our radio hours. And we create a little article that we put as a blog post that gives you some useful information that you can apply, but also gives you a window into the type of content that you can find if you actually subscribe to Piano Tech Masterclasses, or attend one of our masterclasses. So make sure you check that out. Also, or it's not this Thursday, but Thursday, April 18th, I'm privileged to say that we are going to be doing a masterclass with Dean Rayburn on action geometry. It's a two-part lecture, lots of great information, measurements, calculations, and how everything works. Talk about the magic line, all that good stuff. And of course, Dean's reputation precedes him. He's been in the industry for like 45 years, doing all kinds of wonderful stuff from software to keyboards and beyond. So also just make sure you check us out on socials. You want to check us out on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. Just look up at Piano Tech Masterclass and see what we're up to. We've been pretty active on socials lately. All right, let us move on to the introduction of our guest today. His name is Jonathan Taylor. And Jonathan Taylor, actually, Emrys, are you typing in the show document right now by any chance?
Yes. Sorry, it
Okay,
should be good now though.
give it a pause for a second because it's jumping around. Okay. Jonathan Taylor is a classical guitarist who has represented the United States as an American cultural specialist in South America, the Caribbean, sponsored by the National Endowments for the Arts. He's toured through Europe, North and South America, and Asia. He is known for his virtuosity and unique transcriptions and has significantly contributed to increasing the available repertoire for the classical guitar. During his formative years in the 1970s and 80s, Taylor studied music at Chapman University, took master classes under the great Christopher Harkening, and studied privately for years at the home of the virtuoso Pepe Romero under Frederick Noad. Best known for his PBS series and as the author and composer of the seminal book Solo Guitar Playing. He was also head of the music department at the Newport Institute of the Arts in Southern California. Taylor was one of the first artists to record digitally back in the early 1990s, and he recorded over 300 unique pieces in his catalog. His music is streaming worldwide, and when not touring, he resides in his native Southern California in Huntington Beach. And on top of all this, you'll find today he's got a great sense of humor and a really cool guy. So Jonathan, welcome to the program. It's good to have you here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You've really done something wonderful here as a musician in just clearly creating a wonderful life where you get to express your creative self, explore your fascination with music, share it with the world, tour the world, do all kinds of great stuff. So, first off, congratulations. That is not an easy feat to be a creative person in this day and age and be able to do so many wonderful things with it. When you started, considering a career as a musician, right? I don't know if this was before university or, when you first started to realize, okay, this is going to be my main thing. What did you envision? How much of what you've put together these days is actually coming from a vision that you created long ago versus kind of just coming together serendipitously?
Most people do not realize their childhood dream, but fall by the wayside. Most people don't have will, or shall we say perseverance. And I don't mean this as in the pejorative and as a indictment of humanity,
Sure.
but as it's just rare. When I was very young, I was 4 years old, I would pick out tunes on a ukulele because my little baby fingers couldn't do any other like the guitar, because my grandmother was a silent film organist that worked with all of the notables of the era. For instance, she worked all the time with Charlie Chaplin, with the Keystone Cops, with Harold Lloyd, with Lon Chaney Sr. She did many gigs with Harry Houdini, many gigs. And she played what's called the Orpheum Circuit, which is what Fox owned before he started his 20th Century Fox film or moving pictures, and 32 frames a second. Isn't that what it is? Or is it 26, 24? And in order for the eye to have the illusion that it's moving. So I was influenced because she's playing piano, even though she's a silent film organist. And so I think that
you were inspired to see that there was possibility for a career in music in the first place.
Okay, so now, then I became very serious. I started to really study at 10, but at 16, at 14, really, I swore an oath that I'd become one of the best ones. And
was there blood involved, and was the devil involved?
Satanists did not.
Did you make a deal with the devil at the crossroads?
I did not plant the kiss of shame upon him. No, I was not. Do I drink blood now? Of course, gallons. But there was no. I'm not Jimmy Page. So no, I just knew. At 14, I say I became a man, and I'd already had sex before that. But I mean, when I say that, I mean I was giving money to my mom, taking care of the house, and I knew what a depressing, sad, horrible moment it was to swear such an oath, because it means you have to sit in your chair for 6 hours a day. It means you actually have to be not a phony with electronics and a bunch of meaningless gobbledygook, but you have to actually learn how to master the instrument. And as Jascha Heifetz said, the violin is the most difficult instrument in the world to play, with the exception of the classical guitar. And the reason why is because of double stops, triple stops, as a violinist or a string player would say, or chords, dyads, triads, tetrachords. And that's ongoing constantly. And if one does not know how to, if the technique is not that you know how to eliminate tension, you'll just become a three-chord country artist.
And when you
So
say tension, you mean in your body to kind of manage the or the tension on the strings, or what do you say when you manage tension?
I will give the guitarists here a quote that will help them, but it won't help them. And that is, a sound is produced not by applying tension or applying energy, but by releasing that. That's a very difficult thing and a very unusual thing to do. Because naturally the grabbing motion of the monkey can't get his hand out of the jar.
Okay.
And the grabbing motion is going to cause that. So when I say tension, I mean at specific points. And in reality, it is not the fingers that create the tension, but the mind. Because no thought, you can't move your muscle unless your mind says it, unless it's a spasm, But I mean, you can't do that unless your mind is involved. I
Sure.
want to pick up water, right? I want to eat. I want to use the computer mouse. You have to use your mind to do that. So did that answer your question?
Let me see what my first question was. Oh, the
Yeah.
tension. Where does the tension come from? If you know how to kind
This
of
is
manage
where
the
it comes
tension.
from, right here.
Okay. All right. Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay. Great.
Origin, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on the piano, of course, we understand hopefully the mechanics of strings under tension and the soundboard. I think one of the things that's a little bit counterintuitive to folks before they learn about it is that in order to hear the piano, right, there actually has to be the soundboard does not actually accept energy from the string. It actually needs to reflect energy back into the string so that the string can continue to vibrate so that you can hear the beautiful tone of the instrument, right? If the soundboard were to accept all the energy from the string initially, it would be a thud type of sound, right?
And
As
Bach
opposed to like
hated
a
the
beautiful.
piano, by the way.
Yeah?
Bach
Tell
hated.
me more.
I'm going to tell you that in a second, but let me give something to your pianist. The paradigm in which people look at something can alter the methods and alter the very channel in which you're going to express that instrument. The piano is a percussion instrument. What are you talking about? No, it isn't. Well, here is why, and so is the guitar. The guitar is not a stringed instrument. A stringed instrument is bow, the violin, the viola da gamba, the cello, so forth and so on, the bass viol. The illusion that must be created with the guitar is legato, right? Is the connection of one note between the other. How do you do that when the minute you hit it, it decays? With the piano, you have a very a better gimmick, and that is the pedals that will hold the sustain. With the guitar, it decays immediately. So why am I saying it's a percussion instrument? The hammer hits the string, okay? Sets the string into motion. Obviously, your finger does that, or fingers. And the same thing is true of the guitar, only the piano is doing this and the guitar is doing this. And the string is not plucked, not struck, but released. And so when you look at things differently through those means, through that paradigm, you see that there's a different way to do things, a different path, right? So now I'm going to tell you why Bach hated the piano. Bach never went 1685 to 1750 is the Baroque era, which is Bach's life, and that's how it's counted traditionally in music history. Bach never went more than 50 miles from the place he was born. He was a Kapellmeister in Kürten and Weimar. And I'll tell you why you know about Bach, because you shouldn't know about him. But that's next. So one of his buddies said, hey, John, hey, Johann, Johnny, there's this new device. As you know, he was a Kapellmeister, Bach, and played organ, für mein Gott, on every manuscript written at the bottom, almost every. Said, hey, Johnny, there is this new instrument. It's called the pianoforte, right? Mm-hmm. Soft and loud. And said, why don't we go see it? So they took a carriage to the neighboring township in the, what is that, Austro-Hungarian Empire now at that time? And went over there. Well, he heard it and he freaking hated it. And why did he hate it? Because it didn't have that sustain that the bellows of the organ go over, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's very ironic, because how many Bach pieces have been transcribed for the piano? All of them, right? A whole bunch of them. Now let me tell you why you know about Bach and why you shouldn't. In about 80 years after he croaked, you know, his kids thought, Dad is an old fuddy-duddy. I don't want to write like him. Carlo Philipp Emanuel and all the rest of them. And I want to write in the new style, Mozart. That's the good style. All that church crap that Dad does, it makes me sick. So now these are
direct quotes, by the way, right?
Well, they're close. There may not be verbatim, but they're the spirit of.
Yeah, I get it.
The spirit of. They probably didn't use the vernacular I use, as they weren't Americans, because they didn't exist yet. So if it's 1750, it's 25 years later, or 26 years later till our rebellion rather, proudly rebelling. And so now there's a young conductor, about 23, named Felix Mendelssohn. He is not known for his compositions yet, wanted to be the toast of the town in Vienna, put something on at the Staatsoper. And he needed to make a big splash for the adoring Viennese public. He went to the library, and there in the stacks were moldy old copies of composers. And he found the St. John and St. Matthew Passion, in which he said, Jesus Christ, this is great. You know, he's wow. So Herzl, he puts it on, he becomes the big thing. At that point, Bach had been for 80 years, whatever the period was, had not been known. You know, he was just another church composer. And the master of polyphony and counterpoint himself now was presented to civilized people.
Appreciate that. That's cool. That's interesting to hear about. Even if I had learned that, I forgot about it.
Probably hadn't learned it. Most people learn things that are not that useful to life, if it's from an institution.
What on that topic, and we're going to listen to some of your music in a moment. What's
only slow pieces? I only want slow pieces.
All right, we'll see what we do.
You should tell them.
I'm the DJ here today, so
that's right.
We'll have whatever pace that I choose. Thank you very much. What are some lessons that you've learned that have been valuable to this whole endeavor, be it the life of a musician or the life of a human being? What have you found useful that you've learned?
You know, the piano and the violin have, 300 years of pedagogy, and the guitar has very little. And most of the guitar composers are crap compared to somebody like Chopin, Bach, Beethoven, at that category, right? And so the Tárrega is a wonderful composer. He's a good composer. Sor is okay, but they're not to the level of Bach. All right, they're not at those levels. So what you learn is you unfortunately, and there is some pedagogy. I'm not saying there's none. there's, Carcassier etudes, there's the SOAR studies, there's all that. But it doesn't matter if you do the SOAR studies if you don't know how the hell to do them, or if you do them wrong. What does that matter? What does it matter if you repeat, a mistake all the time? So what matters is that there is a technique that is developed that is not in the music, so to speak. It's not being you're not being informed from that page. What is it that one person can do a piece and another can't? They don't have the proper point of view that they're playing from. When I told you that all the tension is here, if you start trying to eliminate the tension at the level of the fingers, you're already one step away. You see? You're already far away from where the origin of that is. So now, I did a video once that said, what do you think people, what's one of the big things? I go, well, players, they're thinking about, oh, there's this hard passage coming up, or there's this, I have to do the flourish there. I go, well, once you have those type of nervous things, you'll never interpret what the piece is. You have to be the music. People say, oh, you're improving the music. I go, I never improved a piece of music in my life, and neither did anybody else. I go, I improved myself. And then the notes are already there. They're right there. And now I have to refine who I am. It's a process of, sometimes it's a process of removal, not adding.
So, and just this is interesting. So I've been going a little bit deeper before we hear some music. So how do you characterize that? Is it just practice, practice, practice? Or I guess let me do the second part of the question. Is there some sort of meditative element? Is what you're talking about getting to involve, maybe you're actually not playing, maybe you're visualizing playing, or
okay, let me give you a practical solution. I'll give you a practical
solution. Let's hear it.
In order for a tone to be created correctly, I tell a student, I don't teach much anymore, but when I was going, well, did you ever know that you never played one note right ever in your life? Ever. And why is that? And I go, because of these things. The sound must be here, and you must know most tension is caused by being unaware of the muscle before it is flexed. If it is after it is flexed, the muscle tries to move and creates tension. But before, if you stop the tension here, then it never realizes itself, right? It never manifests itself.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that if you are not aware of the place from whence you're going to move, you can't move it what I call properly. And that means without tension, releasing the sound. You know that an atomic bomb is not an impact bomb. In other words, when you drop, when you bombed Dresden in World War II, those are all impact bombs. When you made the atomic bomb, it has a beryllium sphere. It has thousands of like spikes that split the unstable atom of the plutonium-238, right? Derived from uranium. So you never really, it's not like it goes like that. It releases. So it's the exact opposite thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. I want to hear some of the music you make so people can translate this sort of philosophical discussion into what does it manifest? So we have a little clip here from people could find on YouTube. Make sure I'm sharing sound. I'll get over here to that tab. And as always, folks, if you have any issues, hearing this or seeing this, just let me know in the chat so we can fix it. But we should be about ready to go here. This is we're going in a few minutes here to introductions, variations on a theme by Mozart. that. How does that fit into the philosophy you've been describing, that performance?
Well, to be able to do those gymnastics.
Yes. Mental understanding, sort of the tension release mechanisms of the musculars of the left and right hand, and
My thoughts are
nailing
not
it.
that complex. Here's the thought.
Okay.
In order to produce a sound, I must hear it in my brain. It wants to match with what I'm going to produce on the outside, on the instrument. I am aware of the muscle or the area in which I am playing on both hands. That is all.
Love it.
It's full stop, as they say now.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yes. This is actually, we talk about tuning pianos. And interestingly enough, I think the theme that has arisen in this show, thanks in large part to David Anderson, who was the previous co-host of the show, who passed a bit back, but very similar concept of tuning a piano. Sort of hearing it, right? Knowing what it is going to be and actually not overthinking it, but having a mechanism to really bring forth the sound from the piano in a way that comes naturally from your body.
My uncle was a piano tuner for the Metropolitan Opera in, let's say, the 30s.
Mm-hmm.
So the beads is what he's listening to. As he's listening to the beads, right, of the note, if it's going to be in sync or, out of it. So, yeah.
All right, let's move on a little bit. And we may or may not get a chance to bring in Emrys. So people may have noticed Emrys is involved in the program for the past couple of months. Emrys actually happens to be a classical guitarist. One of our team members at House produced the program. So we may have a chance to bring us Emrys in the conversation and do a little even deeper guitar geek out. But let's talk about some other stuff first. I want to talk about adventures in touring. So you've been all throughout the world, as we had mentioned in the introduction. You must enjoy traveling, I guess. Did it get old at a certain point? Like, what's been your approach to being a musician and traveling? You do it because you have to. You do it because you love it. You go and stay someplace for a while.
I will be on the earth for an extremely short time. The entire earth is every human being's possession, if they understand that. I probably won't be on the earth for more than 20 more years or 30 more years if I'm lucky. Medicine is making great advances. So I don't look upon it. Yes, I've walked upon the earth and moved my will, but I've been in weird places, not just the concert stage. You'd think, oh, North America, South America, Europe, and that. But I've been to India. I've been to, Romania. Well, that's Europe, but that's Eastern Europe. And only one that wasn't a member of the Warsaw Pact. On this radio station there one time, I said, thank God you killed Ceausescu. That was beautiful. Only 25 years too late after he ruined millions of people's lives. And so traveling in the Philippines, traveling in Barbados, not Spain, Barbados, the Caribbean, traveling in South America, in the Amazon, for example. So you meet many different cultures, like Amazonian Indians. Going down the Amazon River, I was looking at an anaconda thinking, my God, I'm just part of the food chain. Just part of the food chain. So your experiences, you take that in and you have a different life than a person that's institutionalized, meaning that went to schools and, has a job and those type of things. So you have a different view.
Mm-hmm. And you're focused, as you said, and maybe even since your early years in Southern California. So you're not that far from like Los Angeles, Hollywood, all that stuff.
I grew up in Hollywood and now Los Angeles and went there constantly. And Dorothy Chandler Pavilion is where I saw Segovia at 16. So I know the whole area. This is my home. I know I'm right now in Laguna. Okay. And so, which is about, 40 miles from LA.
And
Yep.
how has that affected your career? Have you been involved in, recording music for others or for soundtracks or film and television, or has that not been on your radar, your
Mostly,
path?
what I wanted to do was create a catalog, and this is in the 90s. I'd been doing a lot of touring, and I said, I had at that time, like in the 80s, I had like 1 or 2 albums, and I had like a Empire Master Sound record deal in Europe, and then I had Mark 56 records here in America, and that was the big whoop-de-doo when you were in Tower Records and Sam Goody or Sam Ash or whatever, and that distribution, that was an important thing: tapes, vinyl, and then later CDs and that. But now distribution is meaningless. 90% of streaming artists are in the mud. Nobody knows who they are. They're just down there, and they think their people are listening to them. I go, yeah, 2 a week. So it's a different world now. It's the new technology is just, it's follow the money, right? It's follow the money. And you can, the streaming artists, Spotify is the worst. They're Swedes, that's a Swedish company. And so they're half commies. And so they, pay the artist a billionth of a cent or whatever it is. And so the technology has changed completely. And it will probably change again in some way that we can't imagine.
Well, that's actually maybe a good segue. I thought you actually have your own app, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm going to pull it up on my screen here so that people can see what's going on there. And then we might even be able to listen to some music there. Let me get oh, actually, you know what? I think I logged off the meeting on my phone, so I'll log back on. We'll check that out in a minute. But before we actually look at it, tell me about how that came about. How did you come up with this concept of having an app, and how does it serve you, and how long have you had it?
I was signed, sure, 100, a year and a half ago, I signed a record deal with Warner Brothers and HitLab. And part of their promotional tools are to give artists apps. And so they partner with My Seat Media HitLab is a small label distributed by Warner Brothers. And the value of HitLab is that it's headed by Michel Zarga, who was written up in Forbes magazine as an AI genius. And what he was able to do is with AI, he ferret out the listeners of this type of music. Could it be in Thailand or Japan or wherever it is? And so he ultimately, if it realizes itself to its potential, I said, boy, all the A&R men should find you and hunt you down and kill you, because it will make that obsolete, right? Just like new technologies. The blacksmith is no more, because the horse and carriage is gone because of the car. It took 30 years to get the automobile into Western society in America. And so we'll see how long this takes or whatever. But that's why, and I went with HitLab and Warner. And I guess they call it Warner Records now. They don't call it Warner Brothers anymore. And that they partner with other people for promotion. And that's why.
Okay. Let's take a look at it now. I should be able to share. Give me 1 second. Get in the app here.
It's a small stable. That label only has 9 artists. It's a small stable.
Okay. That's great. All right. Zoom screen broadcast about to go forward. All right. Awesome. And then let me see here. Okay. So here's a look at your app. We can also take the opportunity to look at another piece of music. I think this Alamande.
Yes,
Alamande worth checking out?
I hope so.
Let's see if it comes through.
I'll write box and
Actually recorded outdoors?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Correct.
love to listen to that for a while. But tell me more about the app, because you also are doing a podcast that gets featured here as well.
I've been on many podcasts, and
Okay.
so they've been uploaded to that app, and that's
Okay.
also the HitLab app. I call it the community app with the 9 artists, and uh, on the app are the Adventures in Touring video series I did with, like, I almost croaked in the Amazon and, got stalked in India and almost killed, and all sorts of great adventures. And I told you the JPL story about Carl Sagan and,
Before we started, which we could
rock.
mention in a minute.
And then also our performance videos, like you just saw, and audio files, a couple albums up there, and posts, and lessons too.
And is that the primary driver for people who kind of become members? I see there's like a member thing. Is that for lessons or just kind of private content, or both?
Probably both.
Chat?
Probably
Okay.
both.
Very cool.
It's free. You don't have to become a member. I don't care if you become a member. All that, it's peanuts. It's like $40 a year. So I tell people, I go, just get on the app and do the free stuff. If you want to do the other, that's fine too.
Cool.
I think people are financially pressed now, and so I would feel guilty about having them put their hard-earned money into things that don't go in their gas tank or their mouth.
That's generous of you. How are you doing teaching these days? You're doing some lessons like.
I am not teaching. I am.
Okay.
I put up lessons occasionally on the app. I am filming all the time, meaning I'm going out, just like you saw that outside. I've got a zillion location shoots, and it's easy for me because people say, well, isn't that complicated? I go, well, I sit in front of a microphone and play. And I go, that's how complicated it is. And is there problems? I go, well, whenever you're on location, a plane can go by, a kid can walk over, something, right? On the other hand, then if you just do studio, then you don't get that nice environment, right? I mean, like I have videos where the LA backdrop is in there, the downtown area and things like that. I was just in Vegas. It's actually Boulder City, Nevada, about 20 minutes from Vegas. And now I'm in Laguna, and I'll be doing recording here in the next few days. So that's what I'm doing now. That's what I'm doing now, and learning, new pieces.
Okay. So if people you're not doing like a one-on-one lessons, but you are putting material out there that people can learn from, sort of have an educational component.
I taught for 30 years, so I've done my duty.
Okay. Yeah, it is a bit of a duty sometimes, especially depending on the level of your students. I'm curious, Emrys, do you have any specific questions on that note of fellow guitarists?
I want to answer her questions.
I don't know if Emrys has questions. I don't want to put Emrys on the spot, but Emrys, you got anything interesting for us? Any questions, comments? Do you think this guy's full of crap or what? I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's great to hear like about all of your experiences, and like you're talking about tension and everything like that, because it's so important in an instrument like guitar where your fingers are the plectrums. Like you don't have the advantage of the hammers of a piano or the bow of a violin. It's all in what your hand is doing.
That is why it's the most difficult instrument in the world to play. And I say that as a composer. I'll just briefly say something. No, I say that as a real composer. I've composed orchestral pieces. My background is that. String quartets, brass quintets, large orchestral works in that. So I know every instrument. I know what the viola can do. I know what the E-flat clarinet can do in the oboe. So I'm saying that from a composer's perspective, not a player. Okay, I'm saying it is nothing to write a string quartet in comparison to adapting to the classical guitar or writing for the classical guitar a good piece.
Yeah, good pieces are definitely they're hard to write and they're hard to find.
Yeah, well, that's what there's so many crappy guitar composers. There's very few good guitar composers. Very few. And Segovia, and she knows this, that Segovia, even people like Benjamin Britten, Villalobos, all these, Manuel de Falla, all these people that Ponce, that's a story in itself. Is fakery, and so even people like that who are so exalted, I go, well, they didn't know what the hell they were doing. Villalobos would say, do this, and Segovia would say, how? Show me.
Mm.
And one of the reasons why is the guitar is tuned in fourths, not thirds, 1/3 between the G and B, but the standard instruments or the orchestra are tuned in thirds. What does that mean? Voicings. The voicings are going to be completely different. And that is why it has its unique charm and its characteristics. What adapts well? Well, Bach can adapt to anything. You can play Bach with, a piccolo and, a snare drum, and a sand dune. I mean, it doesn't matter the sound source because the music itself is so pure. So I'll give before you ask your question, to compose is very different than to orchestrate. Orchestration is secondary. Composition is primary. People that compose, and there's an exception to this, Chopin is an exception, for example, maybe Beethoven, okay? But to compose on the instrument you're a virtuoso on is idiocy. And why is that? Because you're playing. You're not composing. You're learning, oh, I've got to play like this, and it's nice and it's good, and that doesn't matter. What matters is the purity of the composition. Le Sacre, all right, Le Sacre du Printemps, by Stravinsky, the birth certificate of the 20th century, as Boulez says, is basically dee 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 dee. That's really the organic basis of the entire dee 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 dee, right? And then he orchestrated it with bassoon doing the high register there to introduce the theme for the first movement. So orchestration, when people think about instruments, I go, that is a secondary consideration to the purity of what the music is. In composition, one of the first things we would do is write a piece for 2 non-pitch percussion instruments. And why is that? Because you want to get away from not only the major minor system, but even dodecaphony or chordal systems or Babbitt squares or any of that, because you want to get away from that because you're bound to that. That's why people write themselves out. Like Vivaldi, he wrote the same piece 1,000 times, right? He never wrote more than 1 or 2 pieces. The spring thing is great, it's wonderful, but he's repeating himself. And what does the purity of the music do? I go, well, he's looking at it in just this one way. So orchestration is something to know, tying it into the classical guitar or other orchestral instruments. Orchestration is a secondary idea. A primary idea is the organic production of a piece of music. And when I say that the cell that created the magnificence of the Rite of Spring, the breaking of everyone wanted Swan Lake, Tchaikovsky, they wanted all that world. That's why when Le Sacre premiered in Paris, they chased Diaghilev, the dancer, choreographer, Stravinsky, and Saul Hurok down the alleyway because it was so discordant to them. But getting back to the reason why I'm citing Le Sacre is because in any great piece of music, it germinates from a seed. It germinates from an organic place. Babbitt realized this, created his Babbitt squares, so he would have the permutations of the initial thematic material he's going to do. What is it derived from a triad, or is it derived from a melody, or whatever it was derived from? So the point of that is that a guitar is an instrument that has such color and such range of expression. It's a meditative instrument that when you try to compose from that medium, you'll come out to be, like a folk singer or a country guy, or, you'll have not anything to say.
So I guess following on with that then, because as a guitarist, I would say probably a third of the repertoire is transcriptions, especially if you go anywhere older than Segovia. Basically, everything's a transcription. So going off
Absolutely.
of that and like your perception of orchestration, what is the easiest, or I guess what is the hardest sort of genre to transcribe to guitar? Because like piano gets transcribed to guitar all the time. Sometimes there are
Mhm.
orchestral reductions, but then I know you also do like pop song transcriptions to solo classical guitar. So I guess what is the most fun to you? What's the most difficult? Like what is your sort of like take on that?
Boy, that's a great question. I'm not sure I know because I'm just, when I'm hearing something or looking at, like the Bond pieces, or I transcribe the Wonderful Wizard of Oz, and reduce the score and reduce that to classical guitar to make it a coherent whole. That's what impressed me about Segovia when I was 16 and saw him at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion in downtown LA. I said, my God, he doesn't need a 4-member group. Everything is contained right there. It's whole. And he's playing Tonsman. I think he was actually playing parts of the Cavatina when I was 16 when he was doing that. And
Yeah.
that was about, I think he was playing the Scherzo and the and Danza Pomposo. And I'm just looking at it from, what shall we say, pull the camera back from 30,000 feet. I'm looking at it in such a way, as you get older, you think differently. You have different experiences. You're a conglomeration of those. So I'm looking at it in such a way that I know that this will work. Sometimes, Emery, I will get through partway through the piece and I go, won't work.
Yeah.
Transcribe
Mm.
something and I'll go, no, won't work. And I'll put it down. I'd
You know what?
say half of them are failures. Yeah.
You know what that
Wow.
reminds me of? And we'll have to log off here soon because we usually keep it to the hour. But I went, I was in Palo Alto back in around February and near the Stanford campus and ended up at this kooky little poetry reading where it was some physics professors and scientists that translated Russian and Turkish poetry doing their translations. And
Wow.
it sounds very similar because they had a little Q&A. People asked them about translation. And it sounds like a similar process, right? Like trying to put a piece on guitar that's not for the guitar sounds like a similar process of let me take something that's Russian poetry and put
Sure.
it into English, right?
Sure.
And it was really fascinating to hear, one of these folks talk about it. And it was actually very cool to hear him read the original Russian and then read the English translation because there's sounds in that language
Sure.
of
Sure.
Russian that you just don't have in English, right? So how do you approach
Absolutely.
that?
Absolutely.
Fascinating. Um,
Right. The dative case, I think, also was it 16 cases for Russian as well. And Russian was not a written language for like more than 200 years. You
yeah,
think that they're primitives, but they're not. I mean, they got into space first. So I mean, you'd think that, but
it's a puzzle to do these things. It's a
so
puzzle.
to your point, how did Niels Bohr see the atomic model? He knew that something was jumping from something in some pattern. And light is caused by the decrease in energy as the electron goes to the next orbit. Uh, and how did he is it that he read the medieval stuff because, oh, a perfect circle, right? It's all ellipses, really. It's not a perfect circle, but that was like holy back then. So, how did he organize that chaos in front of him? The same thing is with the DNA slab, right? Watson and Crick. The one guy went home and dreamed of the snakes intertwining in the caduceus and realized that was the spiral staircase. And that was, and the chromosomes are in there. And so, how did he organize such a thing? And I say, there it is. There's the mystic, into the mystic. But why and how? I go, because that brain saw it. Just like
Beautiful.
penicillin.
Yeah, it's
Penicillin
beautiful
was
stuff.
mold, right? Yeah.
We'll have to dive even deeper down the rabbit hole with you another time. You are reminding of a conversation I had about creativity with someone which I really appreciated. where we came to the conclusion that, oftentimes when we think of creativity, we're thinking of creating something new, something novel, right? But if you really think about it, especially in those terms of those discoveries, where it's like a creative concept, oftentimes creativity is just uncovering what's already there, and presenting
Absolutely.
something that already existed, but nobody really ever saw it
Yeah.
before.
And we must be able to analyze. It is our prejudices. It is our minds. It is not the problem, but how we think about the problem.
Beautiful. We're ending basically on that quote. I don't know if that's your quote or somebody else's, but that was pretty perfect. It is not the problem, how we think about the problem. Before we do actually do our outro, where should people go to find out more about you? Just search your name.
Go to Google Play if you're an Android user, or Apple Store if you're an iPhone user, and type in Jonathan Taylor, no break, JONATHAN, TAYLOR, and you will find the app. It's free. Download it. Oh, did I tell you it's free? Oh, by the way, it's free.
Nice.
And that's good enough. And if you don't want to do that, just type Jonathan Taylor guitar into Google and you'll find all sorts of junk.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jonathan. I'll do our outro really quickly here and do a few housekeepings. It's been a pleasure. We have reached the end of another musical journey here at Piano Tech Radio Hour. Thanks again to Jonathan for joining us, as well as our audience live here in Zoom today. As always, we're brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclass. Thank you as well to Emrys for contributing some guitar expertise and questions there. We are brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, cutting edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. If you joined us today, just signing up for this session individually, make your life more convenient. You could subscribe to Piano Tech Radio, just $16 a month, get the recording of today's session and a member area automatic registration for each week's new session. Sign up for that at bit.ly/join PTRH, bit.ly/join PTRH. Make sure you check out the podcast, pianotechradio.com, the blog, pianotechniciansmasterclass.substack.com, all our social media at pianotechmasterclass, as well as our upcoming Action Geometry Masterclass with Dean Rayburn on April 18th. And then, of course, as we said, check out more from Jonathan Taylor, a true gentleman and scholar. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see y'all later.